They underestimated you because you never shouted about what you knew. They mistook quiet for empty and calm for clueless. You watched, listened, collected small details no one else noticed. A slight pause in a sentence, a missing date in a story, a habit that contradicted a claim you did not guess. You verified. You did not need to parade your intelligence. You let outcomes witness for you. They kept asking how you knew, as if knowledge falls from the sky. You knew because you cared enough to pay attention. You treated curiosity like a craft, not a mood. You kept notes. You kept receipts. You allowed time to reveal what rushing hides. That is why your IQ feels scary to them. Your awareness turns their theater into daylight. Your accuracy removes their wiggle room. And when you move, you do not need permission. You have the facts, the patterns, and the discipline to act without noise. They tried to win with volume while you built power with questions. Not the shallow kind that flatters, the kind that cuts. What is the incentive behind this choice? What would they do if no one was watching? What breaks if this goes wrong? Questions remove fog. They expose pressure points. They force reality to stand up straight. You did not argue about opinions. You dismantled weak assumptions. You separated feelings from evidence. You traced problems back to first causes instead of fighting symptoms. They wanted you trapped inside their story. You chose to map the structure beneath it. When you know the frame, the picture loses its spell. They hate that your questions are simple and sharp. They wanted a dramatic debate. You gave them clean logic and patient silence. Intelligence becomes frightening when it makes manipulation boring, when it makes drama look like a cheap trick, when it makes truth the only path that still leads anywhere. You trained your mind the way others train for a fight. Sleep became non-negotiable. Food was chosen for focus, not for applause. Your phone stopped owning your attention. You built hours where the world could not reach you. Reading replaced scrolling. Practice replaced pretending. They called it boring. You called it building. Brilliance looks mystical from the outside. From the inside, it looks like patient repetition. You studied a topic until it stopped scaring you. You wrote summaries until the ideas were yours. You rehearsed decisions before the pressure arrived. That is why you appear fast when real time hits. You already did the work in silence. They think IQ is a gift. You treat it like a blade that dulls without care. You sharpen daily. You remove what blunts it. You protect mornings. You discharge stress before it stacks. Consistency turns intelligence into inevitability. That is when people start calling you lucky, because they cannot see the hours that made fortune predictable. Patterns speak to the mind that knows how to listen. You saw loops inside people, inside teams, inside markets, inside your own behavior. Repeating excuses, familiar delays, the same promises made after the same mistakes. You refused to be hypnotized by new packaging. You asked whether this moment matches a pattern you have already cataloged. You kept a pattern page for your life. What preceded the last bad decision? What signs showed before the last breakthrough? You treated history like a teacher who never changes lessons until the student learns. They kept walking into the same wall because they loved the decoration on it. You stopped romanticizing walls. You watched for early signals and adjusted before the collision. That is why your moves look prophetic. They are not. They are simply informed by memory and organized attention. Intelligence is not just knowing more. It is recognizing the rhyme and refusing to dance to a song that always ends badly. You learned that emotion without language becomes a leash, so you gave your feelings words. Angry becomes protective energy. Fear becomes risk awareness. Envy becomes a mirror for unmet goals. You translated heat into data. That translation stripped manipulators of leverage. They could not yank you with guilt or push you with panic. You saw the tug, named it, and chose your response. Calm is terrifying when it is real. Not numb, not fake, steady. You did not deny feeling. You directed it. That is why your presence rattles people who live on chaos. Their favorite weapons failed. Your compassion stayed intact. Your boundaries stayed sharp. Your choices stayed yours. This is intelligence with a spine. It does not shout. It does not chase. It stands in the middle of a storm and selects the next step with clarity that turns noise into background. You simplified where others complicated. They built castles of jargon to hide weak thinking. You turned decisions into small rules that travel well under pressure. Tell the truth even when it costs. Protect focus like money. Choose depth over novelty. Keep promises to yourself first. Meet the day with 3 stones to move, not 30. When choices became heavy, you used these rails to keep yourself honest. Simplicity is not lack of sophistication. Simplicity is mastery, refusing to get lost in smoke. They wanted to drown you in details so you would forget the aim. You held a short list and returned to it relentlessly. That list built outcomes nobody could ignore. People fear intelligence that does not need a stage. They cannot distract it. They cannot bribe it with compliments. It just works quietly, repeatedly, until the results crush every argument in the room. You created unfair advantages the honest way. You read what they would not read. You checked contracts line by line. You visited the place instead of relying on hearsay. You tested small before scaling big. You kept logs so memory could not lie to you. You did not marry ideas. You measured them. That discipline almost looks rude to the unprepared. They want belief. You want proof. They want momentum. You want traction. There is a difference. Momentum can be conjured with noise. Traction can only be earned by contact with reality. When others rushed to announce, you waited to verify. When they asked how you knew, the answer was simple. You went and looked. You removed guesswork. You did not outsource thinking. Intelligence becomes frightening when it becomes practical. It stops being a personality and turns into outcomes that pay rent, restore peace, and open doors at will. You read people because you cared enough to see them, not to control them, to understand them. You noticed origin stories. You noticed what makes their eyes light up. You noticed what hurts they hide with aggression. You used that insight to create rooms where people could win without stepping on each other. That is why allies find you and stick. Kindness with a backbone is strategic. It makes you magnetic without making you soft clay. They mistook empathy for weakness and learned it was a radar. You were not easy to fool because you were busy honoring truth in others and in yourself. The mind that sees deeply also protects deeply. You built trust slowly, you guarded it fiercely, and you never traded it for short-term glory. Intelligence that serves others becomes larger than any single person. That scale frightens small thinkers because it proves there is a different way to power. You reinvented without ceremony. You uninstalled beliefs that failed results. You admitted when you were wrong and took the win from the correction. You asked for blunt feedback from people who wanted the best for you, not the easiest for you. You did not worship your old identity. You treated self as software, always in version update. That is why attacks designed for yesterday slid right past you. You were not there anymore. You moved on purpose. You made learning your default state instead of a rare event. They cling to being right. You cling to getting better. That difference compounds until the gap becomes a canyon. Then they call you gifted to avoid admitting you just kept improving while they kept defending. Your IQ looks scary because it refuses to freeze. It keeps moving toward clarity, toward usefulness, toward a form of strength that ages well. You did not wait for belief. You acted until belief had no choice but to catch up. You keep your privacy clean, your conscience clear, your schedule aligned to your aims. You trade outrage for output and opinions for experiments. They cannot believe how much you knew because they will not do what you did to know. They want the look of wisdom without the weight of work. You carry the weight and make it look light. That is where the fear lies. Not in your words, in your results. Not in your posture, in your proof. You will keep learning while they keep debating. You will keep building while they keep performing. And the distance will widen quietly until even your silence teaches. Keep going. Keep your curiosity wild and your standards strict. Let your knowledge remain a mirror that makes lazy stories fall apart. Then walk on while the room tries to figure out how you always saw what they refused to see. Every dismantling comes with restraint. You didn't swing wildly, you didn't expose everything you knew, and you didn't burn every bridge. That is what they never understood. They thought destruction comes from explosion, from fire and chaos. But true dismantling is quiet, it is measured, it is deliberate. You didn't fight with all your force. You fought with timing, with silence, with patience. You allowed them to keep believing they were safe until the moment they were already undone. Restraint is power in disguise. It means you could destroy them faster, but you choose not to, because waiting exposes more than attacking ever could. The cruelest victories are not the loudest ones. They are the ones where the opponent still doesn't understand how you dismantled them while smiling in their face. That is why you walked away unbothered, and they stayed stuck trying to piece together what happened. They tried to provoke you into overreaction. They wanted you emotional, loud, and reckless, because that would give them proof that their control worked. You refused. You mastered restraint, and that restraint dismantled them. It is one thing to fight against an opponent who reveals their cards in anger. It is another to fight against someone who reveals nothing at all. Your silence became a weapon sharper than their insults. Your composure became a mirror reflecting their weakness. They collapsed not because you shouted, but because you didn't. Restraint broke their rhythm. They could not predict your next move because you stopped feeding them patterns. Every dismantling requires that kind of control, the discipline to do less, not more, and let the weight of their own chaos crush them. They thought you needed to defend yourself. They thought you would waste hours explaining, clarifying, proving. That was their script. But restraint meant you said nothing while your progress wrote the rebuttal. You didn't need to justify your worth to them. You didn't need to explain why you left. You didn't need to clear your name with people who were already committed to misunderstanding you. Your dismantling came in the form of results. Restraint protected your energy, kept your focus intact, and left them shouting into the wind with no reply. That is how restraint dismantles. It forces the other side to exhaust themselves while you keep your strength for the moves that actually matter. In relationships, restraint is what exposes snakes. They wait for you to lash out, to chase them, to beg for answers. But when you do none of that, when you step back instead, the cracks in their act begin to show. Restraint dismantled them because it gave them room to reveal who they really were. They showed their patterns without you having to lift a finger. Their betrayals became louder when you refused to cover for them. Their lies grew obvious when you stopped correcting them. The dismantling came not from confrontation, but from restraint. You didn't shout to prove the truth. You let the truth show itself, and that is always deadlier than any argument could ever be. Restraint is also how you dismantled yourself. You didn't give in to every urge, didn't chase every distraction, didn't believe every excuse. You practiced restraint with your own habits, and that built strength. Most people collapse because they can't say no to themselves. You refused to collapse. You used restraint as the blade that carved discipline out of chaos. That inner dismantling made you lethal, because once you dismantle your own weakness, no enemy outside of you can win. They couldn't believe how calm you stayed under pressure. They couldn't believe how focused you remained through noise. But that wasn't magic. That was restraint, the refusal to give energy to what doesn't deserve it. Restraint dismantles faster than rage because it cuts cleaner. Rage scatters, restraint focuses. You didn't destroy their entire identity. You took away one piece at a time until there was nothing left to stand on. That slow stripping of power terrified them more than a dramatic battle ever could. They wanted a clash to prove their importance. You denied them the satisfaction. You dismantled them like a house stripped brick by brick while the foundation cracked. That is what restraint does. It denies them the fire of spectacle and leaves them shivering in quiet defeat. They wanted revenge to define you. They wanted to live in your head as you plotted against them. But restraint dismantled that too. You didn't waste years trying to hurt them. You let them fade while you built. The greatest dismantling is proving that someone who tried to ruin you doesn't even occupy your thoughts anymore. That kind of restraint leaves them haunted. They know they attacked you. They know they tried. And yet you are stronger, calmer, and more elevated while they sink deeper into bitterness. Restraint dismantles because it denies them even the gift of relevance. Psychology proves this. Restraint rattles manipulators more than retaliation. Manipulators thrive on reaction. They survive off the energy you feed them. Restraint starves them. It leaves them desperate, flailing, and exposing their tactics to everyone around them. You dismantled them not by striking back, but by starving their influence. That is why they collapsed. They had no fuel left because you refused to provide it. And once they collapsed, they became proof of your strength. Your restraint wasn't weakness. It was the reason their plotting failed. Restraint is not about letting things slide. It is about choosing the battlefield. You dismantled them by not fighting on their terms. You didn't fight in gossip, in drama, in petty words. You fought by holding your standard, by building your empire, by keeping your energy where it mattered. They lost because their entire arsenal was designed for a war you refused to join. They thought restraint was surrender. They learned it was domination in disguise.